At Hall Wines, we are led by our unabated drive for perfection and our enduring commitment to excellence. We measure our success by our own standards, a higher standard. Sourcing fruit from 13 of Napa's 16 appellations, we are afforded a unique vision of the diversity that Napa Valley offers. It can be experienced in the 19 distinct Napa Valley Cabernets we craft, each the essential expression of their vineyard sources. Every vine has a voice. We ensure it sings. With each unique Hall Cabernet, you are transported to a moment in time, a location that will never be exactly the same twice. Our viticulture, our service, and our wines set a new standard. Raise your standards to Hall.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Reynolds. I'm the president at Hall Wines here in Napa Valley, and it's great to have everyone here today. Thank you for joining our Kathryn Hall release event. I'm going to be joined by Kathryn Hall shortly.
Mike, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you take over, Kathy.
Well, okay. I am here, but I'm going to say just the. Hi, there I am. There we are. And hi, everybody. Hello. Yeah. So we are here in Dallas. This is Kathryn Hall. I think I'm not really in the middle of the screen, but I think you can see us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our virtual release event. And we are just thrilled to have you here. So we're going to be talking about our 2020 Kathryn Hall, and we've got another vintage to share with you, but the 2020 is really the purpose of our all being here together. And I'm really glad that you're all here. We've got another group of you all up in New York, I think. James, are you there? Hey, James.
Here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, here we go with the magic of video. So who are you there with?
So we're here in New York, and we have a handful of a few of our customers in the New York City area from some of the finer steakhouses in the area. And currently we're being hosted by Del Frisco's here in Manhattan.
How wonderful. Well, Del Frisco's has been a wonderful account for us for many years, and I'm thrilled that you're there. And who wouldn't have a wonderful glass of Kathryn Hall with a great steak? So it's just great to have you all. Great to have you here.
I appreciate that. We're excited about this. The group's excited to be here, so looking forward to it.
Yeah. And so tell me what you're all, so can you just introduce me to some of the people who are there with you?
Oh, yeah,
I think everybody would really enjoy. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Kathryn.
Okay. So are you ready to have a little Cabernet?
Yes, I think we are.
we beat you to it, Kathryn.
Okay, that's okay. And we're here in beautiful and somewhat hot Dallas, but we're going to enjoy our Cabernet here as well. So I have a wonderful team. Why don't you guys tell everybody about where you're from, where you're. You want to start down here? Yeah.
Sure. I'm Zach Beither. I'm with RNDC, and I manage the Kathryn Hall and Hall family portfolio for the state of Texas.
Okay, you guys speak loud though, so everybody can hear you.
Okay, hi, I'm Nicole Hartwell, and I'm here with Core Hospitality.
Great.
I'm D Duff. I'm here for representing Monarch.
Wonderful. And
I'm George, and I'm over here representing Fort Worth from the Fort Worth Petroleum Club.
Wonderful place to be.
And Sally Harbison with Winetastic Wine Bar.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. So let me introduce Mike to you here now. Mike, who started to talk before he realized I was on the air, has been with. He and I have been working together from honestly the get-go. Mike is really, he's a winemaker at heart, which I think is really reflective of our brand. We will always be, we are now not only family owned, but we are focused on quality of wine. And I think Mike certainly represents that, and he makes sure that we do it. Mike was our first winemaker, and then when we grew a little bit larger, he had to become president. I don't think he really wanted to do that, but you are where you need to be, Mike, and thank you very much for being there. But anyway, Mike, you're going to lead us through, I think, the wines today, are you not?
I am. But all right, well, thank you, Kathy, and welcome to everybody. I also know, I think there's some watch parties in Oklahoma. I think there's a watch party in Southern California going on. And there's one in the Midwest in the Chicago area. So welcome to everyone that has joined us today. And hopefully you have a couple glasses of wine in your hand while we're doing this. So we're glad you're here. I do want to say that, although I was the first winemaker here at the winery back in 2002 when I started, it has been a long time since I've been the winemaker. So we are led today by Megan Gunderson, who is our Vice President of Winemaking. She's been with us since 2005 as integral part of all the operations, and she is sorry that she cannot be here today, but we are in the throes of harvest and really starting to dial in, seeing grapes from all over the place. And so she is spending her time in the cellar and in the vineyards. And although initially she was supposed to be here, we need to prioritize making wine from the 2023 vintage, which is happening now. And I'll touch on that a little bit later in this session. So I also want to thank all the retailers and sommeliers and restaurateurs that have been fans and carry our wines from all three brands. We can't be successful unless we have your help. And we realize that there are lots of great wines out there in the world, but we are very pleased that you have found us and we've found you. And we look forward to a great relationship going forward. And today, we're really going to focus on our Kathryn Hall Cabernet Sauvignon from the Hall brand, which is our flagship Cabernet. But I also want to make sure that everybody who's on the call, in Dallas, you're on the screen, but we would love you to ask questions. And if you have a question, there is a chat that you can ask questions, and then Kathy and I will address them a little bit later.
Yeah, and Mike, I would also say to everybody that so the core of our fruit comes for the Kathryn Hall, comes from the Sacrochet Vineyard, which is where our house is, and it's just a beautiful and very special Cabernet growing vineyard. It is also the first vineyard that Craig and I purchased when we started doing business out in the valley. And it is beautiful. I have to say that we picked it in part because we wanted to make mountain Cabernet from mountain fruit, but we also made it because it's just such a beautiful place. I mean, great Cabernet lives where I want to live. It lives on mountainsides. It lives with a beautiful view of the valley, and so it's a really lovely place to be, which is, Mike, you're not too far from there right now.
I am not. I'm in Santa Elena at our Santa Elena facility today. But, we're here really to talk about the 2020 Kathryn Hall today, but we thought that we would share a library wine with everyone just to give people a sense of how the wines age over time. So often you rarely get to visit a wine with any substantive age on it. And the second wine we have, or the first one we'll actually try, is from the 2009 vintage. And actually, the reason why we selected the 09 Kathryn Hall is we feel that the 2020 and the 2009 are fairly similar in their flavor profile as they were released, is one way to say it. That 2009 and 2020 have similar characteristics. And I was actually looking at the blend, and I'll talk a little bit about how some of the blending components are similar between the vintages also. So, as Kathy said, Sacre is always the core of this wine and the first wine that goes into the blend. It's a beautiful vineyard. We control 33 acres on a really rocky, shallow soil plateau on the eastern hills of the Rutherford Appellation. The vineyard actually sits at the northeastern corner of the Rutherford Appellation. And although people think of the Rutherford Appellation as a valley floor appellation, this part of the Rutherford Appellation is actually in the hills, arguably the mountains, as Kathy said. And I think because mountain location, that really shallow, sandy soils with very significant rock, it makes wines that are very big, very rich, and really intense and lovely, and has its own trademark flavor profile that we can't miss when we're here in the winery. So we're exceptionally fortunate to have it. The other thing that I should talk about, simply because it's really relevant to our wineries, so we've been fortunate to build two of the most state-of-the-art wineries in the world. One in 2005, the Rutherford Winery at Craig and Kathy's home, right adjacent to the Sacre Vineyard. And then again, beginning in 2007 and ultimately completed in 2013, our Hall St. Helena Winery right on Highway 29, just south of St. Helena. And both are gravity flow wineries. It really has afforded our winemakers to have all the tools in their toolkit, including optical sorting, temperature control through fermentation, and lots of other toys that they have. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we march on, about some of the things that we employ in the production of the wines. So, but I think we should try some wine. I think we should start there. And what I thought I'd do is start actually with the 2009 Cabernet Sauvignon. Hopefully everybody has a glass of that. So I'm going to take a moment and try it myself. So I'll just talk about 2009 as a vintage briefly. 2009 was the first of three really cooler vintages that we saw here in the Napa Valley. And one of the things that we saw in 2009 was we struggled to get the grapes ripe in 2009. And so as this wine was released, it had some hints of some herbaceous character, which is normal for Cabernet Sauvignon, a little bit of elevated acidity, and maybe a little bit more aggressive tannins than we're used to seeing in a normal vintage, because the grapes weren't really quite as fully ripe as they are in some other vintages. And one of the things that we did in 2009 is we actually blended some other varieties into this blend. Cabernet Sauvignon in the 2009 vintage is actually 80%. So it's really low on the Cabernet profile, because we wanted to soften and fill out the wine, because the Cabernets were a little bit harder in 2009. And so we accomplished that with the blending of Merlot and a little bit of Petit Verdot into the blend. to give it some softness and some richness. So I hope you enjoy it. I think this wine is aging beautifully. It still is showing a lot of freshness and bright fruit character, even though it's 14 years old at this point. And then, it's taking on a really wonderfully, elegantly aged character. And in wines where it's a little cooler and, the grapes don't get as ripe, we also have more acid sort of leading to the ageability of this wine. And I hope you can see that. We see that a lot in Bordeaux wines. Sometimes people don't see it as much in Napa Cabernet, but I think in this particular wine, the acid is really adding to the ageability of this wine.
I'd certainly agree, Mike. And I think also it still has today all this wonderful opulence that we look for in the Kathryn Hall year after year.
So thank you for saying that, Kathy. I think one of the things that is important to know about Kathryn Hall is the blend does move around a little bit from vintage to vintage, and we're really looking for a style. How would we describe that style for Kathryn Hall? We want it to be reproducible year after year after year. And in Kathryn Hall, we're looking for a really elegant blend, a blend that's not hard, it's not really stringent or overly tannic. If we make this wine well, it should have an almost velvety, smooth texture. And that really smooth, soft character is what we're hoping to achieve in the Kathryn Hall blend. All right, I'm going to go on to the 2020, and then maybe we can take some questions. All right. So 2020 just released. 2020 was an interesting vintage, and I will talk about some of the challenges the Napa Valley faced in 2020 in a second. But as Kathy said, Patricia is always the core of this blend, and in 2020 it is again. Similar to 2009, we actually included about 10% of Cabernet Franc in the blend from 2020, and we felt that the Cabernet Franc gave the wine some density and some interest and some richness in the mid palate that we weren't getting just from Cabernet Sauvignon. It's important to note there are many vintages of Kathryn Hall that are 100% Cabernet. So the fact that in both of these vintages we leaned on some alternate varietals does speak to the fact that the core Cabernet in the background was something that we wanted to adapt a little bit to get back to this smooth and velvety texture. The other thing that I want to say about 2020 is, of course, there were fires in 2020. And it's well publicized and documented. One of the things that is somewhat unique to our winery versus other wineries is that we actually get grapes from 13 of the 16 sub-appellations in the Napa Valley. So we have grapes all over the valley, from the city of Napa all the way up to Diamond Mountain at the north. And in 2020, what we saw was the fires were in the northern end of the valley, mainly St. Helena North. And so first and foremost, with the 2020 vintage, we made dramatically less wine than we have in other vintages because of some of the challenges we saw with the 2020 harvest. There were a lot of vineyards we didn't harvest. There are many wines that we made wine out of but rejected in 2020. And when we sit back and look at the 2020 blends, what we discovered, and we didn't really think about it as we were making the blends, but when we see the blend composition of Kathryn Hall, is we really relied on the hillside vineyards that are south of St. Helena as the core of this blend, specifically the vineyards in Atlas Peak, the vineyards on Mount Vintner, where we have some significant vineyard holdings. And while the fire certainly happened at the northern end of the valley, those parts were relatively untouched. And for the most part, the smoke was blowing to the north in that vintage or to the east. So they were lesser affected. But we're really pleased with the blend. It's a beautiful wine. It has some really nice fruit and pepper and spice. And then you can see, similar to the 2009, the structure of acidity in the wine coming from those hillside Cabernet appellations. And that's why we picked it, is we really feel the architecture of this wine is similar to the 2009. We wanted to show you how this progresses into the future.
I have to say, I wish we had more of it.
Yeah, there you go. It was a year that was certainly challenging, but we are blessed that we have vineyards all over the valley, and we don't have all our eggs in one basket. And so we were able to make some magnificent wines from some of the other appellations, other than Howell Mountain and Diamond Mountain and some of the areas further north in 2020. Kathy, do you have any thoughts on this wine?
Well, that I love it, and it still has that the opulence that we look for that year after year with the Kathryn Hall. But I get a lot of the sort of earthiness that we see is another characteristic of the Kathryn Hall year after year. And perhaps that's a little bit more from the Cabernet Franc that we're using there, or that just the higher, a little bit higher acidity. But anyway.
Yeah, the Cabernet Franc that we put into this blend in this year is actually from Mount Vintner. For those of you who don't know, we have a almost 20-acre estate site on Mount Vintner. It's a beautiful plateau. And, Mount Vintner is a hillside appellation at the southern end of the Mayacamas Mountains. But it's the coolest of the hillside appellations in the Napa Valley. So it tends to have really good acidity, really great strength of tannin. And about Cabernet Franc, it has a tendency to have a little bit of vegetative character too. So we thought it was a nice add, giving this wine additional complexity and density in this blend.
Yeah, I think that's really true, Mike. In addition, I'd say that you were talking earlier about the technology, and we are as high tech as we can be, and we use an optical sorter, for example, and just the latest, greatest technology we know to use with fabulous tanks in our cellar. But I would also say that at the end of the day, this is making wine is such a human experience. And so we have this wonderful winemaking team. As you say, you are an important part of the team as winemaker, but as a winemaker. But Megan Gunderson, who is absolutely the best hiring decision you ever made at Hall, leads a fabulous team, and she's with Allison Frichtel, who has Allison and Megan have been working together for
15 years.
15 years. Wow.
Yes.
How time flies. But anyway, they're both extraordinary winemakers, and it is very much a human process from the decision of when we harvest to the blending of the wines as everyone sits around the table as we blend this wine. But we have the tools that will give us the additional precision that we want. And that really is the added value of this technology that we use.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I would include Don Monk, who's our director of vineyard operations in that camp too. It's absolutely a team effort, and making great wine year after year is as much about the culture as it is about the vintage. So having a great culture, and I think we do, is part of what makes us who we are. So, all right. So I wanted to get some questions out there, and Jeff Zappelli is helping me, and he's offered a question. The first question is, are there preferred coopers, and have we tried using anything other than French oak? So just to make sure everybody knows what a cooper is. Cooper is a barrel producer, and there are many barrel producers. We have done some minor experimentation with American oak a number of years ago, and we decided we didn't want to pursue that. So our winery is 100% French oak. Depending on the wine, the percentage of new and old French oak moves around a little bit. And we do have a preferred cooper. We actually have a group of them, but I would say the cooper that we enjoy the most, that's our highest wines find their way into, is a barrel producer called Terenceau, which is produced in France. And there's a list of about 5 or 6 that are our preferred group of coopers. So I don't want to bore you with a long list of names you've never heard of, but Terenceau is probably the one that we see the most of. I know there was another question out there about alternate tanks that we use in the production of our wines that somebody sent ahead of time, specifically about an amphora. And for those of you who don't know what an amphora is, it's an egg-shaped tank that reaches back to really biblical or Roman times in terms of the way that they made wine. We do have one. It's really small, so it's not meaningful in terms of our wine production here, but we do have both wooden upright fermenters and cement fermenters that we use, and we're really happy with both. We feel that the wooden fermenters give the wine a bit of density and structure in the mid palate that we don't see in stainless steel tanks. And cement does the same, bringing a little bit of richness and density to the mid palate, but retaining a freshness that that we might not see in the wooden tank. So we use both of those. We will get all of our some best wines through those because we like them a lot. But anyway, there's some of the tank technology that we're employing right now.
Yeah, I'd add that we are open to trying all sorts of things, and we do try all sorts of things. And we did give American oak a go as a test a while back, and actually some other oak from some other countries in Europe, I think, as well.
From
But,
Hungarian oak.
yeah, right. And it would have been nice had it worked. It's less expensive. But as with so much about making wine, there are many ways that you can cut corners, but we just didn't feel it gave us the quality that we wanted.
Yeah. Maybe I can use this as a moment to talk about 2023, which is upon us. And, it has been through the end of July, it was historically cold in California. One of the coolest vintages of the last 50 years. So the grapevines were 2 to 3 weeks late through all stages of their growth. It did warm up a little bit in August, but we're still, weeks behind. And for the most part, we really haven't harvested grapes here. We're coming up on October 1st, which means that it's going to be a mad rush to the finish as we start picking in this week and next week. I think we will see wines in 2023 that may have a bit more acidity than we're used to because of that. We will be pushing to get all the grapes right. One of the challenges we have in October, just like everybody else, is that it starts to get cold at night and cold in the morning, and the days get shorter, and so the grapes have a shorter period of time to ripen during the day. So we are keeping our fingers crossed for some warm days through the end of October, and we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, no surprises is what we're going for. Wouldn't you say, Mike?
Yeah, so there's a question that Jeff is putting up, and it's to Kathy. Can you tell us about your parents' vineyard before you
Ah.
owned? Oh,
Yeah, my family vineyard was up in Mendocino County. It actually, in the little town of Redwood Valley, in case you know it, that area. I wish we could have kept our family vineyard in our mix, but honestly, as much pride as my dad had in farming the grapes from that vineyard, it really didn't meet the quality standards that we want from the wines that we make at Hall. So it was a beautiful vineyard, but not part of our portfolio, unfortunately. So, do we have any other questions here? Come on, you guys. Good. Yeah. Well, a live question.
A live question. So you were talking about this year being a cooler vintage. However, Napa has been riddled with climate change, and Cabernet has had some struggles with climate change. So how are we addressing that?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm going to just assume that you all heard that wonderful question. I think that we have found that the changing climate, and we definitely believe there is climate change. It's not, we are doing what we can to reduce our carbon footprint and to address the effects worldwide of carbon emissions. But it really hasn't affected the quality of our Cabernets. And Mike, I'm going to let you talk a bit about more of that. I think we have looked at some studies in terms of the growth time and during the hang time period for the grapes. We haven't seen any dramatic changes in temperature.
yeah, so I actually had tracked this very closely and have been tracking weather stations and temperature data going back to the 50s. And there is not a dramatic change in the temperature accumulation during the season. I think, if we were to see a change, the thing about Napa is that the growing areas in Napa are so diverse, meaning at the northern end of the valley, it's quite a bit warmer, and at the southern end of the valley, it's dramatically cooler. So if we were to see a change of magnitude, I think the Cabernet grapes in Napa would shift south. And it would take a big change in the climate, which we have yet to see, to drive the vineyards, well into the south. But at this point, we haven't seen a change anywhere near a magnitude that would make a difference. And as I said earlier, 2023 is historically cold. 2019 was historically cold. So, there's some recent evidence that, we get cold vintages too. I think in the middle of the decade, in the middle of the teens, we had a couple of really warm vintages in a row that caught people's attention. And then we've had some other data points in more recent years that are going the other way. So
You sent all your hot weather to Texas.
Yeah. I can sort of attest for that being here right now. But I would say also we nevertheless are doing everything we can to reduce our climate, our carbon footprint. And for those of you who have visited us, you probably have been told, if you haven't seen, that the fact that we have the roof of our winery in St. Helena is covered with solar panels. So we do our best to do all we can. And we use recycling materials for our packaging as well.
we have a question that has popped up, which is, and I guess it's for both of us. we're asked to give our favorite Kathryn Hall vintage. So I'll
Okay, well,
let you go
okay.
first.
I'll say the 2013 because I'm just loving it right now and I've been drinking so much of it. I feel we have become really good friends, but I have to say that 2013, when it first came out, was far too rough for me. I remember, Mike, you saying that you thought it was a great vintage and it was going to create wonderful wines. What I really love the lusciousness of a wine, and I didn't feel it in the 2013 when it first came out, but for me now, it is there in spades. So that's it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful wine. That 2013 was a special vintage where we had the sort of the combination of fruit density and concentration and tannin and structure, and it's amazing. 10 years out, it's amazing. I will say that my favorite vintage was the 06. And the reason why it was 06 is it's the wine that put us on the map, that people started paying attention to us as a winery when the 2006 vintage of Kathryn Hall came out. And, there was a time when, nobody had heard of us. And I think 2006 was a vintage where it really caught people's attention. And that wine is aging really beautifully. So
well said. And let's not forget 2008. Wasn't that our first 100-point score?
It was the #2 wine in the Wine Spectator.
Oh, that's right.
That year, yeah. So, yeah, that was
the #1 Cabernet.
There you go.
Yeah,
that wine was good too. So
yeah.
All right. Okay. I guess this is for both of us. Another question: if we could describe the 2020 Kathryn Hall in one word, what is that word?
The 2020.
Yes.
Okay. Silky. Monsieur?
Yeah, I think elegant. So, right. Well, I think we're just about out of time. We want to I want to thank everyone for joining, and I'll let Kathy say a few words too. And we hope you enjoy the wine, and thank you for supporting our wines.
I say the same. Thank you, everybody. You are the trade, are our eyes and ears to most of our customers, most of the people who ultimately drink our wine. So thank you for knowing us. Thank you for knowing our wines and for representing us so well. We are really proud of all of you, our partners.
All right.
Let me say one more thing, Mike, and that is just, we really do continue to love what we do. And we have a fabulous team. We have all been together for a very long time. And we are doing what we do because we love to do it. But it also is just such a wonderful addition to know that you love our wines as well.
Yes, I echo that. Cheers. Hopefully, I see in Kathy's room at least people are not drinking enough Kathryn Hall Cabernet.
Hey, but we will after we're off the air.
As we sign off, you will remedy that. So we have a short little video by Kathy and Megan about the Kathryn Hall to close this, and you can watch this while you're enjoying your Cabernet. So
I hope you enjoy it. Goodbye, everybody.
Hello, my name is Kathryn Hall, and thank you for purchasing the Kathryn Hall Cabernet Sauvignon. The Kathryn Hall is the first wine we ever made, going all the way back to 1992, and has since become the flagship of our line. When we make this wine, we have a certain style in mind. We start with fruit from our Sacrochet estate, the vineyard right here at our home, for its mouth-coating richness and complexity. It has deep, dark, earthy cassis flavors and powerfully dense tannins. From there, we introduce other vineyards for depth and decadence to heighten the roundness and opulence that have become its hallmark character. We just love the aromas of dark spice, chocolate, and ripe berries, and it is just as supple and opulent on the palate. It has this elegant character and a sleek finish that I know you're gonna love. We like to say that our Kathryn Hall is the ultimate way to celebrate life's great moments, but also for those everyday occasions when you just want to feel a little bit more special. Our winemaking team, under the leadership of Megan Gunderson, has set a new standard in winemaking. We are delighted to present to you this latest release.
As we always say, great wines start in the vineyard, and in particular with our Kathryn Hall Cabernet Sauvignon, that vineyard is Sacre-Chez. Sacre-Chez is one of our premier vineyard sites. It sits at 600 to 800 feet in elevation above the Rutherford AVA in the Napa Valley. This vineyard is so unique. It's got volcanic tooth soils. These are really unique soils in the Napa Valley. It's compressed volcanic ash, and this makes the vines really, really struggle. So this is small vine viticulture to the extreme. We have very small clusters, very small berries, and what that translates to in the finished wine is dark, dense, concentrated fruit. We do a lot of work in the vineyard throughout the growing season to make sure that come harvest time we have the most perfectly balanced fruit on the vine. This includes adjusting our crop level early in the season, several leafing passes to open up the canopy during the growing season to allow the perfect amount of sunlight in. We drop clusters on the ground to ensure that the clusters that are left behind are perfectly ripe come harvest time. During the evenings in the Napa Valley, the temperature drops significantly, and it's very nice and cool in the early hours of the morning, and that's when we're hand harvesting this vineyard. This ensures the highest fruit quality and very sound fruit when it arrives at the winery for processing. In the winery, we're doing many different things that influence the overall quality of the finished wine. We employ optical sorting technology, which ensures that only the most perfect berry arrives in the fermentation tank. We have a very sophisticated high-tech winery and a lot of small fermentation tanks. This allows us to keep our vineyard blocks separate throughout the vinification process to ensure the highest level of quality from each unique site. We want a consistent, concentrated, layered, and multifaceted Kathryn Hall each and every vintage. And we spare no effort to get to that end. Much of our winemaking is rooted in tradition, but we are not afraid to innovate and to be cutting edge year over year to make the very best wines. We make wines to our own standards.